Welcome friends. This is a web novel. Imagination is key to enjoying. Please like, subscribe, and comment. Don't forget to give me your feedback.
I slowly made my way into the woods. I still had the stone sword I crafted earlier, but that was basically all I had in terms of combat power. I had already sent out all my minions to do various things. The forest was filled with the crunching sound of me walking through various pieces of greenery. There was hardly any flat land in this rich forest. Eventually, after walking past several trees, I was met by the sight of a girl lying on the ground. "Are you okay?" I asked as I walked closer. She didn't respond. I slowly walked closer to her until I heard another sound coming from a little deeper in the woods. I quickly summoned my lesser stone sword and raised it. All of a sudden, another girl walked out. I put my sword back into my inventory. I didn't sense any danger as she approached. "Heya," she greeted. Do you need something?" I thought I heard someone, so I came out here to have a look. "Ah, you must be referring to the girl I just beat." "Yeah. What system do you have?" she asked. "Why does that matter?" "I'm just curious, unless it's something you want to hide?" "I expect that if you want to hear mine, you should tell me yours first," I responded. She laughed and then took a few steps closer to me. She had long blonde hair which looked like it was almost in peak condition despite the circumstance we were in. She was also in a school uniform, one that I could not recognize. "You're an interesting one," she said. "What about it?" She giggled. "Did you come to act as the prince for that pitiful girl? I don't see why that concerns you." "Of course, it concerns me, I just beat her after all." There was a moment of silence. I waited for her to continue but nothing else came out. Her facial expression showed confusion. "Ah, my bad, I expected you to tell me the reason instead of just leaving me hanging like that," I said. She laughed again. "If you won't tell me what your system is, at least answer this question," she said. "What is it? Would you say that you're strong?" I thought about it for a little while. "No. You're lying." "I'm not." "Oh well. So are you going to tell me why you randomly beat someone up?" I asked. Well, she was trying to rob me, that's all." She flipped her hair with her wrist and looked off into the distance. "So is there anything else you want to know?" she asked. I looked over at the girl who was still lying on the ground. It looked as if she had slowly begun regaining her consciousness. There was some slight movement. At first, I thought this blonde girl was bad news. I was planning on drawing my weapon and calling in some minions to fight alongside me. However, I noticed something about the injured girl that caused me to change my decision. I see what was going on now. Instead, I decided to look at the blonde girl who was standing in front of me instead. "Do you want to join us?" I asked. "Join you? That's an interesting proposal. So what's the answer?" "It depends, what do I have to gain?" "Well, we have shelter and some other things that we could share." That's certainly something, but I'm not interested." "Why is that?" "I don't like sharing," she replied. "What an awkward person." Well, I anticipated as much. There wasn't much more I could offer, so I decided to kneel down and look at the girl who was lying on the ground. She was weakly trying to pull herself up from the ground. As she pushed down to the ground, the blonde girl walked over and attempted to kick her straight in the back. I grabbed her leg, which caused her to look at me apathetically. "Hey now, I'm just having a look." In her hand was a knife of Kali. I just wanted to observe this weapon from a little closer. I had already deduced that the blonde girl was not the aggressor was definitely the girl laying on the ground here. Even so, I still wanted to see something. Just recently I saw the condition required to forge a knife of Kali. Why are you kicking someone who's already on the ground?" I asked, although I didn't really care about the answer to that question. "She's getting back up, is she not?" "There is no need for that, I'm trying to talk to her." I let go of her leg and she took a step back. "You're pretty confident," she said. "I would hardly call myself that. I would assume that you have a pretty strong system." "I have no method of defending myself right now if someone tried to attack me," I said. "That's an interestingly worded statement." "What part of it is interesting?" "The right now part," she continued. "You know what, I am willing to join you." "Who said the invitation was still active?" She giggled. I see now. "All right then, what do you want from me?" I thought about it for a little while. There wasn't really anything I wanted. However, based on her personality, I had some worries. Even if she joined our group, she might still cause more trouble than she was worth. In the end, my goal was to recruit the strongest people I could, irrespective of their personalities. I could always deal with that. Whatever the case, I could read her, and as a result, a person like her could never be a threat to me. "You have to follow all of my orders." So you want me to be your slave?" "If you want to interpret it that way." Don't you think that's a little much? She said, while satirically holding her body. Don't worry, I don't want any of that type of stuff. Haha, sure, well, in that case, I'm allowed to give you a condition as well, right? I'll hear you out. Hee hee, I want you to leave that girl on the ground to die out here. I thought about it. I guess this girl was underestimating me, it didn't really matter, I had planned to do that from the beginning. I decided to leave the knife of Kali on her body since I didn't have much use for it. I don't like using very short-range weapons. The knife of Kali is basically only useful for killing other people, it seemed basically useless against zombies. I don't need a thief anyways, I'm willing to accept that. Haha, you really are an interesting one, alright, I'll follow your orders then. Good. By the way, what's your name? Are you sure you want to know the name of your slaves? Don't act like that. Alright boss, my name is Chloe, Chloe Afford. Hold on a second. Where have I heard that last name before? Why did it seem so familiar? I guess I'd think about it later. Follow me. Woof. Stop it, I'll dump you into a river. Ah, so scary. She laughed. I led the way and the two of us began making our way back to my settlement. Pushing the branches of trees out of my face, I made extra sure that I wouldn't accidentally twist my ankle on this uneven ground. It wasn't a long walk back to the huts and there, we were met by Rosie, who was watering some of her plants with her system. Hey, William, who's that with you? This is Chloe, she'll be working with us. Ah, nice to meet you, Chloe. She looked at Rosie for a brief moment before responding. Likewise. I made my way over to the second hut which had just finished construction. Chloe was still following me, looking around at the various things in our settlement. After a brief moment, she opened her mouth for the first time in a while and spoke to me. So what do you want me to do? Well, what's your system? Ah, that's a secret. You were going to follow all of my orders, weren't you? Are you going to order me to tell you? Ugh. You know what, fine, keep it to yourself, just go collect some items from the forest that are useful. Isn't it dangerous out there though? She sulked. It's an order. Ah, you're so ruthless. I couldn't help but wonder about how strong she actually was. Earlier, when I was observing the injured girl on the ground, I saw a knife of Kali in her hand. The knife was an incredibly strong weapon, especially considering the relatively cheap cost in terms of materials. However, there was one condition to craft it, and it was to commit a cold-hearted murder of another person. For Chloe to defeat someone wielding such a powerful weapon, she must have been strong. Well, strong enough. It was past midday. Everyone was doing their own thing, so I decided to check my inventory. Inventory 1350/1350. 1x Lesser Stone Axe, durability 63%. 1x Lesser Stone Sword, durability 100%. 566x Wood. 101x Apples. 500x Leaves. 73x Meat. 110x Rocks. Token balance 11.216. My inventory was full and I had gathered quite a lot of tokens just from the minions who were automatically selling their gathered resources. I decided to take a look at the shop to see what I could purchase. Shop refreshes every day. Plus 50 inventory slots, 1 token. Archer Minion Recipe, 19 tokens. Woodcutter Minion Recipe, 10 token. I was finally able to afford the Woodcutter Minion Recipe. I decided to purchase it and it swiftly appeared in my crafting menu. I looked at it and saw the cost. It was 200 wood, 10 apples and 10 meat. It was significantly more expensive than the scout minions, but they were indeed a lot more efficient and better at their specific specialization. I thought about it for a little while and decided to craft 2 woodcutter minions. That was all I could craft with the amount of wood I had. However, I still had a significant amount of meat and apples, so I crafted 16 more scout minions. All of a sudden, my number of minions increased drastically again. I opened my advanced system controls and assigned them specific roles. Advanced system controls. Resource division, 26 minions. 3x Woodcutter Minion. 1x Scout Minion, Mining. 6x Scout Minion, Woodcutting. 5x Scout Minion, Resource Gathering. 3x Scout Minion, Hunting. 1x Scout Minion, Farming. 6x Basic Scout Minion. Kumba. Division. 17 minions. 1x Warrior Minion. 4x Scout Minions, Swordplay. 4x Scout Minion. Kumba. 8x Basic Scout Minion. Utility Division, 3 minions. 1x Builder Minion. 2x Basic Scout Minion. As I finished organizing my next wave of minions, I assigned them to learn various tasks and reorganized some of my other minions. As I walked around, I wondered how I would deal with Chloe. She had certainly quite a troublesome personality. It's quite difficult to predict what she is thinking about, and she seems to have this air of mystic. It was going to be annoying trying to make everything run smoothly with her here. However, right now, I needed allies, and especially, I needed strong allies. I have been noticing something peculiar occurring. As the days went on, I've grown more and more aware. There is going to be a problem, and I am going to need all the strength I can get to fix it. So for now, Chloe was here to stay. Asterisk. I decided that in order to further progress my settlement, I would need to get steel to craft more advanced tools and other items. In order to do so, I was going to need mining scout minions. I already had one, but it likely wasn't going to be able to do much on its own. I had already sent it out on an expedition, and I decided to call it back to see how many resources it had gathered. After around 5 minutes, it returned. Your scout minion, mining, has collected 1x iron, 13x stone, 3x coal. Your scout minion, mining, has gained 8 experience since its last expedition. It is now slightly tired. It really wasn't a great deal of things. I looked through my crafting menu. In order to craft a simple iron sword, it would take 20 pieces of iron. At this rate, I was never going to be able to get enough. I also wasn't able to just go and mine the ores myself unless I wanted to venture down into a cave, which I didn't really want to do. My best bet was to just wait for some of my scout minions to finish learning and let them do the dirty work. I needed to craft some furniture for the second hut I made. With the wood I had, I crafted a table, some chairs, and various other random pieces of furniture I could decorate the other hut with. The others should be coming back soon as the sun was beginning to set. I spent a few minutes placing the furniture into the hut and came back out as I was greeted by Ilrich. "You're back from hunting?" I said. "Yep, I managed to catch a rare boar." I looked at the beast in his hands. It was a very elegant-looking boar with a mane and several other very noticeable features. It looked like it had been cleanly shot in the head with an arrow, as there weren't any other wounds on its body. He passed it to me. I looked at my shop and looked at how much I could sell it for. Sell. 1x, wood equals 0.01 tokens. 1x, a leaf equals 0.0001 tokens. 1x, apple equals 0.02 tokens. 1x, stone equals 0.02 tokens. 1x, meat equals 0.02 tokens. Artemis boar equals 4 tokens. It sold for significantly more than any other item I could sell in the shop. Seeing as there wasn't much else I could do with it, I sold it in the shop, being rewards 4 tokens for doing so. As soon as I finished, I noticed that Chloe had returned. "Who is she?" asked Ilrich. "Oh, she's Chloe, she'll be staying with us." "Ah, alright." I made my way over to her. "So what did you collect?" She looked up as if she was thinking. "I got 24 iron, 4 gold, and a diamond." "Seriously? I would never lie to you." "Show me then." "Ah, you really don't believe me?" A brief moment went by as she began taking some things out of her inventory. Suddenly, in her hand, there appeared a bunch of different ores. She stuck out her hand and passed me the items. "Here you go." "What on earth? How did you get all this?" "Do you really want to know?" "I would like to at least." "All right, I'll tell you if you say please." "Oh boy. Please, can I see how you got all those items?" "Okay." She raised her arm and there seemed to be a large amount of energy concentrating at the end of her hand. Suddenly, a large yellow excavator-like drill mechanism appeared on the ground. It was a big machine with a very large and very long drill attached to it. I was surprised by the sheer scale of the machine. "This is my system." As I received all of the ores, I looked through my crafting menu again. I now had enough resources to craft a standard iron sword. It was 20 iron and 50 wood. It looked significantly better than the lesser stone sword I was currently wielding. Chloe looked at me with a smug look on her face. "Good job, I guess. You can praise me a little more, you know." I pat her on the head. "Is this what you wanted?" "Not exactly, but it's not too bad." After a little while, Rosie also returned from her journey into the forest. She was holding a large number of fruits and vegetables. "Look what I got." "Those will be good for dinner tonight," I replied. I began setting up the crockpot for dinner. Everyone gathered around it, taking a seat on various logs I had placed around the area. The bright orange smoke was hypnotic as the bottom of the crockpot slowly heated up. Rosie poured in some water and vegetables and I put some meat in as usual. "Hey, William," Chloe called out to me. "Yeah? I can take care of this if you want." "All right then, I had something I needed to do." "Okay." She took over looking over the crockpot and I made my way back into my hut. Most of my minions were still outside as I wanted to gather resources for a little longer. With my new, standard iron sword, I snuck out without anyone noticing and began making my way into the forest. I went the same path I took the previous day until I finally reached the place where the injured girl was. Ugh, where is she? I looked around the area and saw that she wasn't there anymore. I had wanted to speak with her in order to check my suspicions about a particular person. It was someone who I had suspected for a while now. However, since she was no longer here, I would have to wait for another day. I made my way back through the forest towards my settlement as it was starting to get really quite dark. However, I was met by a very bright light in the distance. Not only light, but there was also a huge cloud of smoke above it. As I made my way closer, I realized that the area was quite warm. There had been a fire at my settlement. I rushed back and saw that one of my huts was on fire. Ulrich, Rosie and Chloe were all nowhere to be seen. Ah, it's finally happened. Suddenly, the first person I saw running towards me was Rosie. William! Someone set the hut on fire. She grabbed my arm and pulled me back. Let's get out of here! She yelled. Wait! I walked further into my settlement and looked around the area. I couldn't find Ulrich or Chloe. I ordered all of my minions to return as I tried to figure out the situation. Rosie, where did the other two go? I don't know. I think they ran away. Suddenly, Ulrich appeared. Rosie appeared visibly shocked at his appearance. William, Chloe was with me when we were watching the crockpot, but now she's gone for some reason. He stated. Ulrich, it's fine. Huh? I needed to find Chloe first and foremost. I searched the general area, looking around the burning hut which looked like a large bonfire. The wood slowly burned into char and black dust. I looked into the hut from the outside, but there was no sign of Chloe. The only other place she could be was in the forest. I ran into the forest, looking around at the various trees. My vision was heavily blocked, so I struggled to look far into the distance. William, what are you doing? Ulrich shouted at me. I continued searching around the forest until finally, I managed to see a slight movement. As I made my way closer, Rosie suddenly ran towards me. She grabbed my arm again and pulled me back towards the settlement. William! It's not safe, let's get your minions first. I shook her off. She stood silently as I ran further into the forest. All of a sudden, behind a tree, I saw Chloe tied behind a tree. There was an extremely thick rope that attached her to the tree. She was simply sitting there waiting. The rope was also stuck inside her mouth so she couldn't make any noises. I quickly removed the ropes as she slowly got back up. Took you long enough. Don't you have any sense of danger? I'm not dumb, you know. I don't really have time for this, we need to go back and deal with her. The two of us ran back towards the settlement. Before us, Rosie stood, with a large ring of water surrounding her. It was flowing around freely as if she was manipulating it herself. Asterisk. I figured it out a few days ago. Rosie's movement had been suspicious. First of all, despite claiming to have a botany-themed system, she didn't appear to have any abilities related to plants. Whenever she went out on expeditions, she came home with wounds. However, that wasn't enough to suspect her. She might have just been lying for some other reason. However, once I met Chloe and more importantly when I saw the girl on the ground, I realized it. It was true that Chloe had beaten up the girl. However, I noticed something quite suspicious. The accessory that the girl was wearing was the exact same accessory that Rosie wore. The knife of Kali. She also had some plants on her that I have only ever seen Rosie collecting. I finally figured it out. Rosie was lying. Asterisk. How did you know? Rosie exclaimed as she violently cycled fresh water around her. I'll admit, you were pretty subtle. How did you find out? Several factors. Her face was covered with anger. Hey, Rosie, I tried to speak to her. Someone else is making you do this, aren't they? Why does that matter? I'm your enemy now. Well, if it's someone else, I'll just have to deal with them instead. She shot a jet stream of water towards me, just barely grazing my cheek. Who is it? Who's making you do this? She stopped listening, instead, putting more energy into her attacks. Ah, what a hassle. When was it when people began calling me a psychopath? Asterisk. Ulrich took a Kerwick arrow out of his quiver and placed it onto his bow. Look at you guys. Preparing to kill me like nothing ever happened. Rosie didn't look as if she was truly evil. I noticed small tears forming on her eyes. It was hard to notice, but they were definitely there. A large amount of water orbited her like a barrier. I took a few steps towards her. Willie a dash. It's fine, Ulrich. I could feel droplets of water splash onto my face as I made my way closer to her. Her ability didn't seem extremely strong. Not that that really mattered, I was going to kill her with my own hands. Hey Rosie, you weren't lying when you were telling me that story, were you? She shot another sharp stream of water right toward me. The blade of water cut my arm this time. It seemed that she was purposely avoiding my vital areas. As I looked at her, I noticed that her face had gone dark, she was hiding her eyes under her hair. The entire area was still illuminated by the intense fire that was rummaging in the background. I continued walking closer to her, step by step. She appeared to be annoyed by my movements closer to her, however, she didn't attack me. As I made my way closer to her, the voracity of water splashing against me increased. It now felt like a hose, pouring water on me. I still hadn't even reached her main barrier of water which was orbiting her. Ah, this sure was refreshing. I plodded closer enough to her to finally be able to reach her water barrier. I stuck out my hand and caused a break in the barrier. The water splashed onto my arm like a permanent tide on a beach. It was an odd feeling, it was cold and crisp, like the water from the Arctic Ocean. She looked up at me, finally showing me her eyes. "Gee, go away, don't look at me like that." Suddenly, her mood changed. She raised her arm and began gathering water in the palm of her hand. This was going to be annoying. If the water blades from earlier were any warning, this attack was likely going to hurt. I wasn't just going to take it sitting down. I quickly opened my crafting menu and crafted a stone shield. As the water was released from her hand, I summoned the lesser stone shield and blocked it. The force of the water was enough to cause cracks to form on the shield. It would likely only be strong enough to take 2 blows. I was going to need something stronger. Almost like we could communicate telepathically, Chloe threw a shield toward me. I didn't really need it, but since she was giving it to me, I guess I'd use it. "This is my shield, take good care of it." I picked up the wise diamond shield. Rosie began charging another water attack in her palm. This time, I simply raised the diamond shield and easily blocked the water blast. Rosie kicked the ground in anger. Why do you have to be so annoying? She was like a child having a tantrum. Something about this still didn't seem right. Her actions, her personality, something was off. I knew it from the beginning. Suddenly, the barrier of water around her was released. I could now see her plainly, standing out in the open, hair swaying in the breeze. Her attacks pushed me back a little, and once again, I began walking toward her. "Rosie, you and I are alike." Well, I was lying, but whatever. She charged a different water attack in her hands. This time, water gathered in her hands like a ball, a levitating ball of water. "We can work together." She acted as if she couldn't hear me. Suddenly, she released the ball of water, shooting it straight toward me. The blue, liquid ball flew through the air, traveling towards me. Water dripped onto the ground as it glided through the air. I raised my shield once again. The ball of water suddenly exploded as it hit my shield. The shockwave was strong enough to send me crashing into the ground. Ow! I slowly pulled myself up, however, as I looked towards her, I realized that she was charging her water blade attack again. The moment she released it, I quickly rolled to the side in order to dodge it. The dirt beside me was shot up like it was hit by a grenade. The area around had already practically all become mud from all the water. I quickly heaved myself up and faced her. She was charging more attacks on her hands and she showed no sign of stopping. I was going to have to accept a few more attacks. I readied my shield as she fired another water ball toward me. It crashed into my shield, forcing me to the ground once again. It was incredibly hard to keep on my feet after being hit by such a violent explosion. The shield was strong enough to sustain most of the damage caused by the shockwave, however, just the force was enough to send me falling to the ground. Once again, I got up on my feet and raised my shield again. However, it looked like she was using a different attack. Instead of hitting me with a strike of water, she instead relentlessly poured water onto me. The volume was so great that I was struggling to keep my eyes open. I could hardly see anything as my entire view was blocked by the water. Behind the blanket of water, I noticed that she was charging another explosive water ball attack in her palm. With all my strength, I heaved up the shield whilst being drenched with water. Suddenly, I felt a pain in my arm. The water ball had crashed into my shield again. I couldn't even see it coming. The flow of water was relentless. I did not get an opening for a single second. I constantly sustained attacks from Rosie. Non-stop, blast after blast, I was forced to raise my shield and be knocked to the ground. My entire body was starting to get sore from the constant beating. I needed to, however, commit to my ideal of not fighting back, at least for the time being. It was the only way I could win. It was painful. Whilst I had had many experiences being beaten before, I never once was in a position where my decisions held so much weight. Every time the water hit my shield, I felt as if my arms had just been beaten by a baseball bat. Every time, it became more and more difficult to pull myself up from the ground. It was really getting hard to move my body around. I had been completely soaked several times through. Luckily, the heat emanating from the fire was enough to keep me warm. However, it would only last so much longer. After that, I would just be a wet, freezing cold person standing on a windy cold night. Hope was not lost. I could tell that her attacks were slowly getting weaker. I knew that there had to be some sort of limitation on her abilities, and I was finally starting to see it. She could only continuously attack me like this for so long. Again and again, I pulled the shield up and blocked her attacks. The water splashed all over my body, splattering all over my already wet clothes. The weight of the attack felt as if I was being pushed down by a sumo wrestler. It was tiring, really tiring. Even the shield felt like an infinitely heavy dumbbell, pulling down against my arms. Eventually, after countless attacks, even she had to slow down and catch her breath. "Why, aren't you fighting back?" she asked. "I still want you here with us." "But why? I'm trying to kill you guys." "That's not what it looks like." After hearing my words, she choked on her words and looked as if she couldn't say any more. Tears flowed from her eyes before she quickly covered them with her hands. She looked down at the ground, not even making eye contact with me. "And no. The reason I ever came here was to sabotage you." I walked closer. "That's a lie." "No. That's not a lie." I still wasn't exactly sure of her intent. She was incredibly dangerous, her attacks could easily wipe all of us out if she was actually trying. Her voice cracked as she hurried to rebut my statement. "You're just going to manipulate me so you can find out who the mastermind is," she cried. "I have nothing to gain by doing that." She began gathering water at her palm for another attack. "All that matters is that you stay here with us, where you came from doesn't matter." "No. No, 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 no." Her voice trailed off. "We're friends, aren't we?" Suddenly, she looked up at me. "The story you told me." I explained. "What you said wasn't the full thing, right?" What do you mean?" "The full truth is that you weren't forced to be her friend, you wanted to be her friend, you were always looking for someone to confide in." She continued to gather water in her palm. "You're afraid," I said, "you're just afraid of getting too close to someone." She fully charged her next attack. The water gathered at the point of her palm had concentrated into another powerful weapon. Bits of water dripped to the ground, but the main core of the water was as solid as a rock. The water flowed freely around in a ball as she controlled it with her power. "Ha ha ha, you're just a coward, aren't you?" I shouted. She suddenly looked at me in shock. "Huh? I am not, they made me d-dash." "Stop hiding behind your excuse, what are they going to do if you don't follow through?" "I mean, but. Come on, prove it to me, prove to me that you're not scared." I stuck my hand out towards her. "I knew you were a traitor from the moment you got here, but do I look like I care?" I took a deep breath. "I want you to stay here, it doesn't matter where you came from and what your reasons are." The water on her hand slowly began to dissipate. "Forget everything else, stay with me, I'll figure out the rest, all you need to do is to take my hand." As tears freely flowed down her eyes, she began taking steps towards me. Why aren't you angry at me?" "Anger, hate, sadness, who cares? Maybe I really should be angry at you, but at the moment, I don't care about any of that." Water began cycling around her again, it looked like her heart was still locked. Eventually, she began taking more steps towards me, however, water was still orbiting her like the moons of Saturn. All of a sudden, she stopped again. "I just can't." I promised. "Who cares about promises? What does your heart want?" "I don't, no." I dropped my shield to the ground and looked at her. "If you want to kill me, now is your chance." Wait, what are you doing?" "I am willing to gamble my support for you, whatever your heart wants, do it." Tears were flowing more rapidly from her eyes. They were now a shade of red, her hair was all messy and covered most of her face. However, through the tough, dense facade, Rosie's true feelings lay dormant. Under the bleak, unyielding mask she was wearing, Rosie's true feelings lay dormant. I needed a few more seconds. The silence was deafening. At this moment, nothing was happening. The fire had stopped, her water barrier had ceased and there were no noises. However, a few seconds later, the sound of zombies appeared from just outside the forest. Ulrich and Chloe quickly rushed off to fight against the horde of zombies which had just arrived. Still, Rosie and I stood, facing one another. "I'm going to kill you." Water began gathering in her palm once again. "Well, that's your decision and now you're going to take responsibility for it." This entire time, I had been buying time for my Warrior Minion to sneak up behind her. She suddenly noticed the presence of my Warrior Minion and quickly launched an attack at it. In the split-second opening, I summoned my stone sword from my inventory. In the dark, bitter woods of this new world, with the icy cold wind blowing against us, I killed her. I won't let anyone betray me and get away with it. It was the next day. I was awoken by the feeling of Chloe pulling at my hair. As my eyes gradually adjusted to the light, I looked around to see the situation. Fitting 3 people in a tiny hut was quite difficult, however, we made it work. Aren't you going to thank me for being your bait last night, hero? Ah, that did happen last night. I must admit, you're definitely something. I'll take that as a compliment. Hee hee. I slowly pulled myself up from the makeshift bed that I slept on. It was about time to organize my minions for the day. You have leveled up. Level up. Level 4-level 5. Rewards. Unlocked. Minion housing. Minion manager X1. Minion hut recipe. Inventory space, plus 2000. I unlocked a new feature on this system. I looked at my menu and opened the minion housing menu. Minion housing. When there is housing available, minions will spawn at the rate dependent on the number of empty houses available and the housing rank. Current housing rank, F. Current housing available, -46. I had unlocked a new recipe for a minion hut. It was slightly smaller than the normal hut and cost significantly less. To craft a single minion hut, it would be 200 wood and 20 stone. The only issue was that it also needed builder minions and each hut would take 2 hours to build. Inventory 3012/3350. 1x Lesser Stone Axe, durability 62%. 1x Lesser Stone Sword, durability 99%. 5x Iron. 4x Gold. 1x Diamond. 1966x Wood. 131x Apples. 500x Leaves. 93x Meat. 310x Rocks. Token balance 12.773. I was currently able to craft 2 more builder minions. I decided to craft them and also craft as many minion huts as I could. In total, I managed to craft 5 minions huts in total. The sheets of paper lay themselves in my hand. I looked at the minion manager. It was like a substitute for me, able to order the minions to do tasks without the need for me to change their programming. It also had the ability to distribute my resources. I left a little slack in terms of resources, but I would invest most of them into building more minion huts. I wanted to increase my manpower as much as possible. On. When, wood greater than 350 and stone greater than 100. Craft minion hut. Then, place minion hut adjacent to an already existing minion hut. At the moment, all I could do was wait for my minions to collect more resources. I looked over at the hut which was being repaired by my builder minion after being burnt to the ground the previous day. I didn't really mind. One of the reasons I built that second hut was to bait Rosie into burning it down. Last night, I managed to deduce several things about Rosie. 1. She gains experience by using her water-based abilities. 2. She can earn new abilities by using her experience points. 3. She has a water tank which needs to be replenished once it runs out, either by soaking in water or simply waiting for it to refill itself. It was an interesting system. It was a lot less complicated than mine. Judging by its nature, it is a mostly combat-oriented system. Eventually, I wanted to take revenge on those who ruined my life at school and then rise to the top of the global leaderboard. However, the final thing I wanted to do was somehow find a way to possibly return to our old world. The new world wasn't too bad, but I had some unfinished business. The others had gone out to collect various resources. I was once again left alone in my settlement. My body was still a little sore after the fight the previous day, however, it was worth it. I was going to build an army of pawns to eventually take over this world. I wanted to find more people, but before that, I should probably stabilize my minion situation. I decided to write a few more lines of code into my minion manager. On. At the end of the day, report resources gathered. I wanted to keep a track of the rate I gathered resources. This way I would be able to organize them more efficiently. At the moment, I would just check my inventory every once in a while and just guess the efficiency of my minions. I also wrote another line. On. When apple 5 and meat 2. Craft scout minion. It was annoying having to constantly craft scout minions. I decided to write some code in order to craft them whenever I had enough resources. I added that to the end-of-day report so I could accurately keep track of everything without having to micromanage everything. It was probably a good idea to get them to learn some new skills. However, I would set that tomorrow. I wanted to gather resources as much as I could today. I sat on a log and casually thought about what to do next. I had all my goals in mind, but there wasn't exactly a great deal I could do on my own. It was probably a good idea to get some more equipment for myself in case I was ever caught without my minions on hand. I really needed to have a break. I scrolled through my almost endless screen of crafting recipes. There were so many items. Baths, tables, chairs, cupboards, beds, tools, machines, minions, they all floated past my eyes in a blur. What did I even want? At the moment, I wanted to focus on increasing my strength. There were going to be more zombies tonight that I would need to take care of. Ah, what a pain, this new life of mine. I suppose I could go gather some resources manually. Several hours later, my minion manager walked up to me. I've got the end of day report. End of day report. Total resources gathered. X1243, wood. X20, leaves. X71, meat. X488, rocks. X2, iron. Other. X24, scout minions crafted. X2, minion hut built. Hut repaired. It was much easier to keep track of everything once it was displayed like this. I was gathering resources at a very quick pace. At this rate, I would be able to start expanding my settlement. Suddenly, I received a notification. Bug alert, global rankings have been debugged. I opened up the global rankings. Global rankings. New Gen Humans. 1. Mackenzie Franklin, 1624. 2. Noah Gate, 1122. 3. Oliver Moran, 1121. 4. Louis Talman, 989. 5. Radine Sedeganad, 865. Your rank, number 29. Your estimated progression score, 743. Suddenly my EPS had been updated. It was much higher than it was previously. I guess the bug fix meant that my EPS now was accurate. Even so, I thought I was improving rather quickly. However, there are quite a few people who are above me. Mackenzie Franklin had more than double my score. It would be quite a bit of work to continue pushing up the rankings. I took a seat on a slightly moist log as I waited for the rest of my group to come back. I fueled the fire and it began flickering in the small fire pit. Ah, this fire was quite small in comparison to the great hut fire yesterday. The fire grew and hypnotically flared in my eyes. It was a nice view, the orange, red and yellow, dancing around in the air. The sky was starting to darken. It wouldn't be long until the zombies arrived. I continued waiting beside the fire pit. For some reason, the rest of my group were significantly tardier than normal. I wonder what they were doing. I set up the stone crockpot and boiled some water inside. I still didn't have any vegetables or spices, so I had to wait until the others came back. An hour passed and none of them came back. The sky was now starting to seriously darken. There was practically no light coming from the sun anymore. The weak purple-orange rays of light were blocked by rough gray clouds floating in the sky. A few more minutes later, I heard a noise coming from the forest. "Heya, William." Chloe was the first to return. I looked at her clothes, which were a mess. They were covered with dirt and mud and blood. Parts of the cloth had been ripped off and there was obvious wear. Creased almost covered her entire clothing. Her hands had dirt mixed with blood, traveling all the way up her forearm. She was holding a crimson-red stained platinum sword in her right hand. It looked like something had happened. "What happened?" I asked. "Oh, nothing much. I went out and gathered some more ores." "Why are you such a mess?" "Hey, that's not very nice. I got in a fight, that's all." "With what?" She returned her sword to her inventory and pulled out a dark piece of clothing. "A person, I'm not sure what they wanted. I tried to get some information out of them but they didn't say a word. All I have is this clothing that they were wearing." She passed what appeared to be a dark gray hoodie to me. "Who did this belong to?" "I think they were trying to kidnap me." The person was armed with a lot of ropes and a large bag. They also concealed practically their entire body. I'm not sure what their goal is. That is a little concerning. I checked my minion menu. I was surprised to find that several of my minions had died and others had been severely injured. Something seems to be killing my minions as well. How about we hunt them down? I'll think about it. It's not great to have people threatening us and hurting my resource collection. "Okay, so what's for dinner?" she asked. The others haven't returned, so I don't have much to cook. I only really have meat and water." That doesn't sound too great. Did you manage to see the others while you were out?" "I haven't seen them at all. There was a chance that they may have been attacked by the group of people that Chloe were talking about. It was pitch black in the forest, so there was no reason for them not to return. It was also highly unlikely that they would get lost. They seemed to be able to return without issue every other time." "You think that they may have been attacked?" I asked her. "That definitely is a possibility." "Ugh, what a hassle, right after what happened last night as well. I guess we can search for them tomorrow." Aren't you more worried about them?" "Not really." "How cold of you, they're your precious friends, aren't they?" "Oh yeah, I did say that." You're quite the liar." I decided to just cook the meat directly on the fire. It looked like we weren't going to be having anything else tonight. As my food cooked, I looked over at the two new minion huts. Quite a few minions were crammed inside. The space was starting to get too small to fit my very large amount of minions. Most of the minions were just wandering around the area, not too far away from the abyss that was the forest. Chloe passed some of the resources she gathered to me. There were several different ores, all of which my minions would struggle to gather in their current state. I watched as the steaks cooked above the fireplace. The smell permeated through the air as the edges began to brown. I figured that it was likely that my minions gathered less resources than normal because of these attackers. I guess I'd really have to go deal with them. By the sounds of things, I assumed they were human and not some other race, but I still couldn't be too sure. "Is the food ready?" Chloe asked. "Yeah, grab one." "Thanks." The two of us ate our steaks in silence as I thought about what I was going to do tomorrow. It would probably involve me taking action.
Thank you so much. Visit us more for more novels, please. Like, subscribe to our channel.